All good? Okay, I'd like to go ahead and call the Laws, Ordinance, Zoning, and Permits Committee to order for this evening, March 1st. Members present are Dr. Feldner, myself, Mike Richard. Our other member is not present tonight.
I'll make a motion to excuse Ms. Ault.
Thank you. Need a motion. Second by me. So Ms. Ault is excused for tonight. Minutes, Doc, you got it's on the back of the.
Yes, and I make a motion to approve the minutes as presented from the last meeting.
We have a motion to approve, and I'll second that. Anything to add to the agenda for tonight, anyone? Okay, with that, I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second that.
Okay, approved. Let's go right into the discussion. Tonight we're going to discuss Chapter 1121 of the Galleon Codified Ordinances, referring to non-conforming uses, or uses in a residential zoning. Who would like to start off on this?
I guess I will. There are 3 members of the Planning Commission. That's kind of how it first came to our attention. Mr. Gimbel, Ms. Ward, and myself. At our last meeting, there was a discussion about a property on Grove. 368, is that right? Might be, no.
370 something.
370 something. Okay. It is, and I'm assuming they're neighbors here on, not only Chris, but anyways, the issue was a property was purchased, formerly a triplex. It had sat for 2 years without utility service, therefore losing its previously grandfathered standing or status in the RC1 zoning district, which we know, and it's the predominant residential zoning district. Okay. I said out of that discussion that I would bring the issue of whether or not why Mr. Baldinger refused the request to have the permits activated and allow the occupancy for the triplex. Bring that back, share it with the committee. In the interim, a property on South Market, I'm not familiar with that one exactly, but I understand it's the same owner, the same individual or people who recently bought the house on Grove. Okay. So those 2 similar situations washed ashore, and then Mrs. Oots gave us a call. They've got a property that they have recently purchased on South Union. Very similar situation. In this case, a duplex sat vacant, no meter, and so when they went to remodel it,
we're in that process.
and right, they ran into the same thing, getting a meter put in on the 2nd floor where they had lost their duplex status. So I'm not sure a coincidence or if there's, a trend where some of the properties that had been multifamily are now the market such that there's an interest in remodeling them, renovating them, or what exactly caused 3 of these very similar issues to come ashore. But that's how it looks like from our office.
You said similar issues. I get the similarity between Union and Grove.
Right.
How about South
Market's
Market?
the same thing, isn't it?
A former multi
I think she's got it.
reverting back.
The one on South Market was a triplex. And
Okay.
it sat empty after sustaining some damage. They want to start using it as a triplex again. It's
Okay.
more than 2 years.
And so there's no recourse currently in the ordinance for them to appeal to get them grandfathered back in. My concern is the choose my words carefully here. I don't want to see a single-family home purchased and chopped up into apartments, reverting back to a former, whether it be grandfathered or not. That's one thing, but I'm a resident on South Union, and I'm surrounded by multi-family units, and by and large, there's really not a problem, save for one specific address, maybe two that I'm thinking of. I have no idea where you bought yours, but I would hate to see that process gain a foothold in town where maybe a property that was neglected, was sold with the idea of making it multifamily. I don't think that that is an idea that I would want to see put forward. An avenue to have a former multifamily house, that's what the ordinance states, that after that it reverts back to, because it was not maintained in that status, it reverts back to whatever the ordinance says in our
and with the amount of legal research that was done on this topic, it was identified that it's in the revised code, that reversion, that 2-year reversion. That aspect isn't part of the city code.
That's part of
Right.
the
revised.
It's on the back of your packet if you
Okay.
flip it over.
So you learn something
Okay.
every time you have an issue like that. I've got some thoughts on it, but I know that there are other folks who, and once I get going, then.
All right, if I'm allowed, I can give background. That's why I came, was to give background. Because in 2009 is when the zoning code was changed, and it was specifically changed for these single-family neighborhoods to be single-family, period.
Right.
It gave the 2-year, so that if within that 2-year window, you could keep a multifamily that had been existing. But this council specifically, wanted to make sure that these neighborhoods would gradually, it may take 20 or 30 years, but they would gradually revert back to single-family houses, that people would be encouraged to buy these houses that were chopped up and then revert them back to single-family. And as you guys know, I have personally done that, and I'm in the process of doing one right now on the corner of Union and Atwood again. And I've had great success and great, and for the neighborhood. But one of the reasons, I can give you some statistics that I gave back in 2009, that from 2001 to 2004, and I physically did the research on this, the police calls in the city increased by 16%. In the neighborhood from Market to Clymer, from Harding Way to Grand, that block, that area, as I lived there, and Doc lived there, we saw that neighborhood gradually keep being changed from single-family ownership to break down into 2- and 3-unit apartments. In fact, during that period of time, it increased to 114 properties. And the crime went, in that 4-year period, up 55%. Where the city went 16, the crime went from 55. And that didn't include just petty things. It was theft, domestic violence, child endangerment, gross sexual imposition, a homicide, just down the street from me, juvenile liquor, assault, weapons, burglary, aggravated menacing, indecent exposure, disorderly conduct, intoxication, fraud, family disputes, and unruly juveniles. It changes the whole complexion of a neighborhood when you start allowing these houses to be changed to these multifamily. And so in 2009, City Council said, no, it's not going to happen anymore. And it's been that way ever since. And unfortunately, I feel badly that people didn't do the research on what the zoning was and purchased a property not knowing that it was no longer able to be, a 2-family or a 3-family. But I don't think that we should then, for those isolated incidents, change what we were trying to accomplish back in 2009 and forward, and allow people to buy houses with the understanding that they can invest $100,000 or $150,000 into a single family house in these neighborhoods and not be subjected to somebody coming in and destroying their property values with these multifamily units. And that's why, I know he's my son, but that's why he's here, is because he's in that situation with the gentleman on Grove, that, the house has been abandoned for over 5 years, and this guy and the owner of the property knew that they could not make it into a 3-family. They knew that, the real estate company told them that, and yet they misrepresented the property and sold it to this gentleman. My feeling is that gentleman needs to go to civil court, and that's where his remedy is. It isn't coming to city council and saying, now you need to change your laws because I made a mistake.
Well, do you have documentation since 2009? How many homes have been converted successfully?
Well, since 2009, none should be.
No,
Converted back into a home.
Huh?
How many have been, what your plan was, to turn back into single-family homes? How many have?
I have not done the research, but I can say on Grove Avenue that there have been at least, I can cite 2 that are right beside the one property, that people bought the property. Both the properties that were bought were multifamily. The one that he bought was chopped up into 5 apartments, and the one next to him was chopped up into 3. And he's invested $100,000 or more, and the people next to him have invested $60,000 or $80,000, converting them back to single family. And now we have somebody that comes in and goes, well, I don't care what you've invested. I'm going to turn this back into a 3-family, and I'll shut up and let him tell you his experience with that 3-family over the years. And just like the property that Doc, or on our street, that I purchased next to me. I lived there for 25 years, and I had to deal with drug dealers. Literally, I had to go to Chief Satterfield and say, Chief, at 3 o'clock in the morning, there are people coming and going from this house with suitcases. So they're not visiting with suitcases. And he promptly put the house under surveillance and got rid of them. But that's the kind of thing that I've had to deal with, and domestic, and it's just, so I finally got to the point where I just went to the owner of the property and says, I don't care what the cost is, sell it to me. And he was nice enough to sell it to me for an exorbitant price, but I fixed it up and turned around and sold the house for $180,000. And that's what I hope will happen with all these properties, and I'm sorry that somebody makes the mistake of buying them, but that we shouldn't be changing the zoning just to satisfy somebody.
Well, tonight, just let me clarify. Tonight is strictly a discussion platform, so.
I understand.
And that's that. And please, if the folks out here, if you have a comment or something, let's try to direct it to the committee members as, other than maybe some minor questions. You were.
Yes, we have a little background. So the house that we purchased was a true built duplex. It is not being transformed into anything it was not originally built to be. And that's our job in this town, and what we were trying to do. In the house that we just did, we tried to turn it back into what it was originally built to be, but brand new. Making a home that was not sold for $12,000 a couple years ago, just sold for $160,000 because of the pride and workmanship that we take into our properties. And that's what we were trying to do with the property on 602 South Union. It was a true built duplex. This house makes no sense to be a single family home because somebody that would purchase a home there would not be able to afford what it would cost to maintain that house. It's over 3,500 square foot, true built duplex that needs to be back to that.
It has 2 entrances.
It was built in that fashion. We are not trying to modify or change because we have seen some of the exact work that this gentleman is talking about. And we are trying to be a good name to rehabbing houses instead of some of the bad taste that's been left previously. And
We
that's all.
actually brought a portfolio of the last house we did, so you can see what it looked like prior and what it looked like when we were done with it.
Oh, I have no doubt, the integrity, I think the issue, and Ken, I don't think I was on that zoning committee.
No, I figured you probably were at that time.
You know, and I know how many,
Public hearings and all that, yeah.
well, how, the length of time it took to,
It was like a year and a half.
at least.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that in the process, things were overlooked, like the mayor said. I mean, we have no recourse in our city, but yet there's something in Ohio Revised Code that allows for it, without getting into specifics. So I don't think the quality or your intentions are in question at the committee. It is there a way, and again, I don't think we're changing the zoning if we give an appeals process a shot. If it's not there, then they have no recourse, and I'm not sure I'm in favor of no recourse. Am I
Yeah.
kind of
I
stating?
just wanted to pick up on the point the point about how long that was sitting there. Okay, I don't know if you missed the point or that was sitting there for 5 years. So I'm not sure I'd be crowing about how successful that change.
Oh.
Because you've got properties all over town that have sat vacant for many years. And sort of we won't look at this attitude. I think you need to look at why some of those are sitting vacant. The house that you have, Chris, how long was that sitting vacant before?
Lots of years.
That's my point. So if the remedy was to get rid of these eyesores, it's not working out, man. It's not. There are more of these derelict houses, I believe, in the community than when you set out to clean that up.
No question.
So,
And I will give you
Yeah.
the props that for as long as that rewriting that ordinance took, it was still a woefully incomplete job.
yeah, it was,
You know,
yeah.
Because it was done, I mean, it was.
It was a cut and paste job, I'll
Right.
say it. I
Right.
wasn't there, I'm not being critical, but
I agree.
I mean, when they printed it, it had another community's name in it. It's like, we paid you a lot of money.
Yeah.
It was kind of, I can't think of the consultant's name, but it was his, like, he had 3 products, you know?
Right.
It was one of the zoning formats that he used, and, I mean, it's been durable, it's not all bad, but I think the issue that I don't want to have not addressed is if you want to hold these I'm going to jump the track a little bit. The big homes that we're talking about in the old part of town, right? Those were built by families whose wealth is not replicated today. These are old, wealthy people who built great big grand homes and had, not always, but more often than not, large homes, large families. Just teasing one of our staff, she has 3 kids. You know, it's a big family these days. So there's a little bit about taking a huge old home, not a mansion, but a pretty nice, prestigious home. You know, how are you going to make that work? I think you see that in some of the homes, while most of Harding Way West looks pretty solid. There are some homes there that although it's not the multi-family, single-family issue is pronounced, but I worry about whether they'll ever be fixed up. So the worry is some of those homes that are in R1C that can only be single-family homes, I'm not sure if they make economic sense that way.
Well, they hadn't in the past,
Yeah.
but prices have risen in home values to the
Yeah.
point where it does make sense now to remodel these homes and the person can invest the money and expect to get the money back.
I
And
don't,
I don't think the answer is
Yeah.
just because they're large or something like that, is to go back and start allowing people to chop them up, and then you have the same problems. You have disinterested people living in those properties that don't care what effect they have on the neighbors
Right.
that have invested $150,000 in their house. They don't care. They don't own the property. They
But Ken,
throw trash out in the yard.
yeah.
What brought me to my knees finally on the house next door to me was the Memorial Day weekend when they took the front window out of the second floor and they threw all the furniture on the front lawn, including the appliances, because they were mad at the landlord or whatever. And so then I had to sit there over Memorial Day weekend and look at this pile of trash on the front yard, and that was said. I said that's enough. I don't need to live like this with these properties being treated this way by people that are, and I'm not impugning you, but a lot of these landlords do not care what happens to their property. As long as the people pay them money, they don't care what it looks like.
Well, Chris, let me ask you, you renovated, of course you did too, and you folks have. Why? Because again, these properties that you, I'm assuming, picked up and renovated have been in disarray for, 2 or greater years. Is the reason for you doing that is a turnaround basis? And is there a turnaround to that in the sense of financial?
Answer that.
Well, there is, but there's gotta be a cap. I mean, you can't expect to buy one of these large Victorian homes where houses don't sell for $500,000 and expect to put the amount of money into it to do it properly and think that you're going to recoup that from a buyer. Because I don't believe there's a lot of buyers that are willing to pay $300,000 to $400,000 to $500,000 to live in some of these areas.
Well, I'm sure some of that has to do with the location that
Absolutely.
they're located at. Chris?
I bought the property because it was a spectacular old house that needed saving, and I wanted to live there.
We live there.
And so that was,
We're not selling.
I have been working on it and working on it and working on it, and I couldn't tell you how many thousands of man hours I've put into it. I mean, it isn't about, for me, it wasn't about ever reselling the property.
Well, and that's what I'm
You know,
saying.
it was about living there and making it a home that I can live at until I'm,
Tell them how big it is.
and it's, inside space is over 4,000 square feet. I mean, it's a big, and if it wasn't big enough, I converted the attic space into a man-made living space as well. So, but it's big,
Well,
but it's
And the
just an amazing house, you
The
know?
house next door isn't a big mansion that is chopped up. It's a small house.
right. Well, let me ask you, folks, is what I'm gathering is that primarily this is an issue where we have houses that people have bought thinking that they were duplexes or whatever, not necessarily a single family home with the intent of making that duplex or bringing that duplex back. Am I correct on that? And if so, it's not a situation where we're trying to open up a new market, so to speak, for duplexes in different areas of the community. Or am I missing the point here?
Well, the way I look at the house next door to me is this is a chance to correct a wrong that was done in the past, you know, where this house is a small house. It's not, I mean, it's an average size house, and it was chopped into 3 really crappy, tiny little apartments that don't live well. Now, their situation, if it was built as a true double, personally, I wouldn't have an issue with it staying, going back to what its original intention was. But the original intention of the house next to me was a single family, you know, just normal size house. And having lived by, or been working on my house when it was previously occupied, it was a revolving door of police calls. My house was getting broken into. I mean, there was a time I almost gave up on finishing my project and abandoning ship because I'd be in there working, doing stuff, and I'd come back, and then the basement window would be broke out, or one of the arch top windows would have a rock through it from on that side of the house where it was a rental. So when it sat empty long enough, and I knew that something forbid it from going back to that, it was like hallelujah. I mean, it was.
And in his case, in his case, this particular house on Grove, it was illegally made into a 3-family even before the 2009. The zoning before 2009 was that they could make duplexes, but they couldn't make 3 families. So somehow this house was illegally even converted to a 3-family and slipped through the cracks, of our building department and zoning department. I don't know how that happened, but it did.
Can I ask
Because they had to research that when the gentleman came and wanted his meters, and so Mr. Palmer researched it and said it was always illegal. We can't grandfather an illegal house.
Can I ask a question? Would you guys agree, do you guys believe that there's a housing shortage in this town for people needing housing?
Absolutely. Sure.
Okay, and how many vacant homes are sitting empty? Right. A ton. I mean, it's ridiculous, right? And we are trying to go in to provide 2 homes, turn the house back into what it was meant to be, right? I know we're different. I know what they're going through, right? And we've looked and we've watched this market for a very long time, and I understand their point. But there's an extreme housing shortage, and you have a small company who is willing to go in and make an old house brand new and bring in upscale people, right? We're talking the apartment that we were going to rent downstairs is going to be $900 a month because it's going to be 3-bedroom, 2-bath, brand new, everything remodeled. And our 21-year-old business partner's son is going to be upstairs.
Who's
going to maintain the property. And this is a home that we are keeping forever, right? And we are trying to turn this into something that's going to benefit our company, benefit our family, and we are being told no, that you cannot make the changes to a house, right? And it was originally meant to be what we're trying to do with it, and you guys are saying no, you can't turn it into that. And I believe that that is an issue with the current housing market and the shortage. And I know that if we are not allowed to go our route, I think it will change our opinion on the amount of houses that we purchase in this town and try to do this with. And we want to stay homegrown. We live here in this town. I went to school here, graduated here, all of our kids, everything, and we want to do good work and make everybody in this town say, look how nice things can be if you take some pride in your property.
Right. We just improved the market value on Fairview. So we took a house that was worth $20,000 and turned it into $160,000.
And that's more income for the town.
Appraisals in that area. So playing devil's advocate, I have a question. I hear what you're saying about chopping up houses, but can you please tell me the difference in renting out a large home and people having multi-family members living there? 10 plus people moving into one house. I mean, how is that any different? You're talking about a certain clientele. You're talking about certain landlords. And I don't know if it's a case-by-case basis that you would go by, but everybody's not the same. So you can't take those individual things and say that's how it's going to be for everybody. And it's not going to stop. I mean, people who own properties can do what they want. It's all in the price point. So if they're not nice homes and you're not willing or allowing people to come in and make them nice, you're going to continue to have that type of renters, that type of people in your community. It's all about the price point, and
we're trying to raise the price point.
Absolutely.
No, you said that we're saying no. I'll look at it is that the code doesn't give us an opportunity to say yes. Okay, and I mean I'm splitting hairs, but
yeah.
So that's the first point. I think if we were to figure out, and I guess that's why we wanted Mr. Palmer. Okay, I'll support,
it is complicated.
I'll support your statement.
It's a complicated issue that needs
right. So
thorough discussion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Beyond the scope of this first meeting. Lost lost my train of thought. So I'm open. What I was going to say is that it's going to be tough to. Part of the issue is your circumstance is far different than the circumstance on the others. So it is going to be a case by case basis, and man, what's going to be our
Right.
what's going to be our framework to do that?
I actually think, I might make a couple of comments, that the caliber, the quality of people who are commercial landlords in Galion is higher than I've seen in other communities that I've worked in Crawford County. Okay? That we don't have the person driving around a $200,000 car and, uses their main thing for plumbing repairs is duct tape. You have that in other places, for sure. Those of us been around it in one angle can name the names of people I might be talking about. Anyway, so that's the first thing I want to say. We have the people who are investing in this town to make a living, either flipping or just as landlords. I think we're lucky to have them. A step back, I think when you look at the number of Galionites who live in rental housing, I go back to what you were saying. Do you want more housing? Heck yes, we do. And what you're doing is a shorter distance in time and less expensive than the other big projects that the city is getting involved in. The apartments that have been talked about, they're not a sure thing, but they're about $220,000. Now you don't have to tell me, but you aren't putting $220,000. And again, it's not brand new, but it is kind of rebuilt. You'd say, well, brand new. This is better than brand new. It might be built better.
Yeah.
Right.
So those are a couple of things I wanted to say. The last thing I wanted to say is, as I listen, your idea about a home that was originally built as a multifamily, as a duplex. It wasn't, hey, we're just going to hang a stairway off the back. That kind of
And there are
cobble
some of those
stuff.
houses in Galion that were not built originally as duplexes, and I can see that would be an area where, where the code could be tweaked.
Council, I think,
agree
should
with you.
look at that. I don't have language, and I didn't even think of that until we had this
They were
discussion.
originally built that way, but if they were originally built as a single family, then I just truly believe.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of those. You can think of
No, not
other
a lot.
places,
There's-
the
but there are
neighborhoods
some.
in the Cleveland area where everything's a
Well, yeah,
duplex like
or
that.
Columbus
Boom, boom,
down.
boom, boom, boom.
Yeah, you get 11th Avenue or some of those that I used to live in college, and every house was a duplex, they built one right after another.
Right. So, what may I ask? I think Julie might be the best person to help on this one. Is this, they make a permit, is this a Board of Zoning Appeals? Is that an avenue that they can go on that individual case? The other owner, your neighbor isn't, your new neighbor is not here tonight, are they?
No.
Okay.
Because it's by the code, it's outlawed, I don't think it can go unless there's a zoning change. That would allow it as a, not as a,
That's what my
a
understanding is too.
conditional use,
Right.
right?
Since
It would have to
since
be-
it's an outlawed use, you can't appeal it.
Right,
There's
because
no
of-
appeals process.
Because of this section of the Ohio Revised Code. So, from when Thomas was explaining it to me, it would require, it would be allowed as a conditional use. In whatever, if it's R1C, R1B, whichever one it is, I'm not sure which one it is, and I cannot look that up.
Well, this would be the committee. What I'm hearing is you can't make a Board of Zoning Appeals. A lot of time has been put in. You probably noticed that. There's legal scholarship that's been put in on that. One would think that, I think it's to protect the city. So I find that really upsetting, and as anyone who's worked with me, if you're not here, I'm not gonna like, well, he's not here, so I'm not gonna say anything. That's crap.
Right.
Knee deep in this thing for days. Knee deep in this thing for days. Your argument is sharpened. So I give you credit for working on it.
I've been working on it for a long time.
I know you are. I know you are. So I think that there is a remedy to change the ordinance to look at some of these more duplex properties. There's a proposal going that is going to come in here from a couple different developers. It's another thing that you probably agree on are tax credits. Only way I can get 40 homes for elderly is to hook up a $10 million mostly tax credit deal. That project on Hosford Road that you maybe wouldn't happen without the federal housing tax credits. So some other night, or come up someday, and we can talk about how that's distorted the housing market. But in any case, there's another proposal well on its way for what's called workforce housing. Did you see those? Did you see those units? Look an awful lot like duplexes to me. The difference would be they'd be in a multi-family. So that wouldn't work in these situations because we hear the squeal of spot zoning. You're gonna have spot zoning. So I don't think we're getting near what would be the final answer on that. We've got housing stock. We need to protect zoning to protect people's property values, but we ought to look at housing so as to get the most renovated houses, most units, at the lowest cost. And we shouldn't. 10 million for the senior, I bet the one that we're gonna hear about in the second half of this year is 10, 12 million for
For how many
buildings.
homes? How many homes is that?
They're all rentals, I don't know. We'll see, 48, 50.
One of the things about zoning is, of course, the fact is that it does, like you say, it protects the property owner. And so you have to have that if you're going to have these houses that people, if they do buy a house that's an old single-family house and they plan to put 100 or 150,000 or 200,000 into it, they have to have the expectation that next door is not going to be something else.
Yeah.
They have to. That's the only way we're going to attract people to renovate these properties is that inducement. It's just like, with the design review uptown. I'm a big advocate of that because I want to protect it. When I came to this town in 1991, most of the buildings uptown, firstly, were empty. I mean, it was almost 90% were empty. And most of them, and I don't, some may remember and some don't, what they look like. I mean, some had aluminum siding on the front covering all the windows in the building. Somebody just aluminum sided the whole front of the building 3 stories tall. Lots of them had black corrugated metal just covering the fronts of the building, covering the windows and everything.
We were here before that, Ken. Not to be rude to my friend, but I was here when you came to town.
Oh, okay, very good.
Glad that you did.
And I just think, and so I was so thankful that, we had design review, which is a form of zoning that, protects that I made this investment and I couldn't have somebody come next to me, buy a building and then put aluminum siding back on it, It's just like it had one before I came. So, and that's the same logic that I use with these single family neighborhoods that there has to be some inducement. I think it's terrible. I mean, I think it's horrible that we don't have, that the government or some entity does not have some sort of tax credits or some inducements to help people invest in these properties and restore them. That if you have businesses, I can get tax credits for my, to restore a building in the business zoning. And, but no one can get tax credits to restore a single family house. You know, no matter how dilapidated or anything, there just is no
Well,
mechanism
then you have
through
people
the government,
that
so
can't.
each person is on his own.
Well, yeah, they got rid of that tax deduction, gosh, how many years ago was that, on rental properties, limited it to.
Yeah, they got rid of that.
That's how they got rid of
Yeah.
that.
Well, that was unfortunate also, because that spurred, that did spur a lot of investment in uptowns. That tax credit did spur investment in uptowns, that, people looked at it and went, oh, I'm gonna get this tax credit if I, remodel a building uptown, and it was a tax credit.
Yeah.
In other words, on money that you owed the federal government, this money you put into the property was a credit against that tax. It wasn't a line item deduction when you got down to the bottom and you owed $10,000 and you had $10,000 worth of credit. You no longer owed the government any money. It was that kind of a credit, so it induced people to come in and risk their capital on renovating uptown property. And unfortunately, no one has ever done that on residential in small town America or big town America, or wherever that needs that these properties need renovation. So that is a problem.
Well, and to that point too, I know these folks, as some others out there, that are taking some of these structures, but I call them structures, but in some cases that's all they are.
That's all they are.
Okay, and they are turning around,
Yeah.
which is great that they're doing that. I have to go back to Doc's original statement is, I'm not really, at this point in time, in favor of taking and creating new multifamilies out of single families, okay? But I'm also not opposed. I think there needs to be some remedy for the folks that these structures were originally put in that had multifamily determination. Now, it's great. I think it's great that Chris, you've taken a large structure and renovated it. As you said, the one was a 3-family, which wasn't supposed to exist. So those are great that that's changing. I'm just kind of, at this point, be curious to know, this is the preliminary discussion. I think that I see both sides of the coin, so to speak. And I think that, but there's your point to being, we don't need to add new to it. But then again, I think the remedy is maybe some way of helping out the folks that are in a situation where they came into or they bought a unit that they believe was a 2-family, and give them some type of remedy, especially if they're renovating it. It's not like they're necessarily changing it. If they want to go back to single family, all well and good. But the fact that they may want to continue what had already happened. I understand your point earlier about trying to change it all to single family, but as the mayor indicated,
It's going to take a long time.
yeah,
It's
well,
gonna happen
and
overnight.
I honestly, with the way that many of our, especially young people, are in a transient type of atmosphere, I don't know if we'll ever, it'd be nice to see it happen, but I think we also gotta look at all the windows, and that's what this committee will do.
Mike, if I might.
I just look at a guy like Tim Musselman.
Yeah.
And you all know, and you all know that property, and he's got a $500,000 or a $750,000 property, and he'd be lucky to sell it for $200,000. Because of what's around him. I mean, it's just almost to the point of absurdity of what he lives by. What these landlords have done to all these properties, and I even brought a map that every single property around him is a multifamily. Everyone.
Didn't he know that when he bought it?
He's trapped.
But he also knew that there was a zoning that once these things were sold and left abandoned, they wouldn't be taken back to three
Right.
apartments. We've waited a long time for that house next to us to be declared it can't be 3 apartments.
Well, My expectation, I would say on that property, sort of sort them out, there, I don't get into, I've known Tim since we were kids, worked with his wife. Guy used to collect fire trucks.
Yep.
So don't give me some sort of economic argument, he bought this investment, that's not, don't even start that. Don't start.
No, I didn't say.
Hell, the guy allowed this, he voted to put up a carport out his front door, so I let's not go there. It will be a cold day in Galleon, a couple more winters, before the property that you have frozen, the zoning has frozen, nobody's gonna live there, that guy's not gonna. He bought that to put 3 people in there. That thing is likely to go zombie on you. And so I don't think
He has it ready to rent.
No, he's been renovating it the
He's
whole
been
time.
renovating it the whole time.
He just told everybody that, he said, I'll get around this, don't worry.
Yeah.
It's city council will change it.
It's fully
They'll let
ready
me.
to go. It's been repainted inside. It's ready to
Okay.
roll. He
Well,
worked
if
on
this
it
doesn't
today.
coax him to come up and visit with us, I don't think I'll know what might, but my guess is if it's occupied, it'll be occupied as an apartment. They're not gonna get the electric service.
Right.
So that won't happen. Here's my point. That the pro 2008 zoning people who were in favor of it, there's a couple of them who've expressed that. I don't believe that you thought that new zoning would create zombie houses. But that's what I think has happened. You've created these zombie houses that are no better. This notion that some person that's going to come into Galleon and spend $200,000 renovating a house. Really? When was that going to happen? Didn't happen. And so there are more zombie houses because they're zoned out. Both the crappy ones, like you're saying, 3 in this little apartment, okay, and the real ones. That's was a zombie house when you just bought, right?
No, it was for a period. No, we bought it from somebody who got into a very bad situation. It was not being made right. It was,
Inside, not so much.
yeah, somebody had tried doing some work, but
We have to read it.
obviously, you know,
South Union is like, it's not, I know most of the neighborhoods.
it's on
I
the
know
corner of
what you're saying.
Parsons and Union. It's the big
I know.
gray one with the shaker front porch and stuff, so
And
that's the house. It's a true built duplex.
Okay, and I'm with you on that. They aren't side by side, isn't there one door on one side of the house,
Yeah.
one on the other?
No, they're right on the front porch.
Are they?
2 steps down.
On
past.
Union?
It's one big front porch and it
Okay.
has 2 stairwells.
Okay, anyways, the point that I hope you look at as we go through this is whether or not the current standard gets what you wanted to do, and that is the improvement of these old houses, because I'm not seeing it. I'm seeing it in some specific cases where the owner has a passion for it. I don't think, Chris, you're not gonna get that money out of it, are you?
We're never gonna
Oh,
sell
that's
it.
not why you did it.
Well, but you had, you know, when
Yeah,
when Doc was on that zoning
right.
thing, they developed 3 distinct single-family zoning. And
Yeah,
the first one, you know, the one that we're discussing, I don't know about their property, but I think it's probably, and is R1C
Yeah,
historical. You know, the other 2, R1 and B and, R1A and B, are not designated as historical single family. This section of the city is designated as historical. And in and of that, I think should be, have a special consideration that this is where the original historic houses of Galleon were built and were attempted, and I think, you know, I'm speaking for Doc and he can speak for himself, but I think that was the intention, was that they said that section of the city needs to be respectfully treated maybe a little differently than any other section of the city and give it a chance to come back. And then you have people like here pioneering and the people,
Well, the
you know.
house right next to ours is under renovation too.
Right.
It's as big as ours. It's right next door to us.
but you go to the east, I know, it's like, you know, most everyone, I don't want to talk badly about their house. There's some real clunkers. That's not happening there. It's just not happening. You go east, north side of the street, it's just a clunker. I got clunkers. People end up with clunkers for a lot of reasons. Too ambitious, bite off more than they can chew, relative dies, drops this big bomb on them. Okay, so there's, if you've not had that, then you haven't lived yet to have that experience. So, anyways, I know what the intent was, but what are we in here, 12, 14 years? Like Angie says, like, wow, you know, when's this transformation going to start taking place? I want to be here when it happens. I don't see it.
There are some, you know, that are taking place, you know, that have been taking place, and I just turn the clock back and not, you know, see that continue I just think it's a horrible, horrible mistake.
Yeah, but how do I, you know, find my one more point hasn't, that we are principally a middle to lower income. The working people, has been for a long time, 50 years almost now, a blue collar community. And so I think what some of the people who are in the commercial business are buying and renting houses and flipping them aren't trying to hit the professional person who can afford a $225,000 house. They're trying to have quality housing for a family making 60 or 70. So they don't go to Ontario. They don't move out to Colonel Crawford. I think that's kind of what we got a lot of working class families. And we got people in town that want to give them quality housing. That's what I want to avoid saying thanks a lot for your help, but you know, we know we need housing, but zoning's more important than tackling this issue.
What mechanism do we need to go down? I mean, I don't want this to be, 2022, the year of discussion of new zoning. You know, what's our option to modify what we have here? And you know, you talked about spot zoning, you know, this is going to be spot modification. There's a specific circumstance here. We need to have a mechanism to include that. You know, I can't speak to, other circumstances. I don't know if there is a committee that exists to put together a framework saying, oh, you meet all of these, yes, and sorry, you're out. You know, I don't think that's necessarily going to fly. But so what's our
this is a place to take it back and go through the existing ordinance and the legal considerations, and that is if the home was originally built as a multifamily, duplex, whatever definition we would give to that for it to revert back or move forward, revert sounds like we're going backwards, move forward into reuse as it was originally constructed for. Now, I'm not sure if you're going to pick up 5, 10, 15 sitting here tonight, but we could probably do a search by looking at utility accounts. So let me work on that. That's how we know that this is going on. We got one, it's a request for service, more than an occupancy from building. And our meter folks say, well, wait a second, or billing folks, this is a dormant account. That's what starts the back and forth with the building department. So we know from I guess there are houses that were built before Galleon had electricity, but I think most of them, it goes back quite a ways. We'll know Well, I think we'll be able to sort out those that originally were multifamily. Because they were built before there was such a thing as multifamily zoning and R1C and all the, they were.
If I'm not mistaken, before 1969, there wasn't any zoning in Galion at all.
Right. So we're probably gonna find homes like you're talking about, they always were this way. And because of economics.
Well, you had the pressure after World War II, and then the booming Galion economy, during the 50s and early 60s, was part of the reason houses got made into apartments. It was just because at the same point there was a horrible housing shortage, and they needed places for people to live and work, and that were working here in town. I mean, in 1970, and I could be off on the day, but there were more jobs in Galion, Ohio than there were people that lived here.
Oh, that's true.
And so there was this huge demand for, and so people were forced to take a house that was a larger house and make it, okay, I can make this into an apartment for people, and that worked out at North Electric or someplace, and and I understand what happened, but it was.
We had a better, I don't want to go through the history, but we had a better response on the new housing than we do in this shortage. In other words, Wilbur Jackson and Jim Cass was building homes. There were 3 subdivisions as a kid going up. Sunnyside out here, Beardsley, Westmore was still building out. So, I mean, that would be the ultimate solution. But if people are making, a successful family's making 70 grand, they're not buying a $200,000. They're not buying an old 4,000 square foot house and fixing it up.
It's hard to justify. My father-in-law, her dad owns 80 acres out on Andonora Road. That's where we live. We have talked about trying to add more out there, but the construction cost of new materials and what you could get, it's just a very fine line on whether it could be successful or not. And so it's hard for new construction. It's better to rehab what's already existing.
Yeah. Well, I think, back to answer your question, I think, give us a little bit of time to look at at this mismatch of houses that are, that used to be multi-service that are one, get a feel for what the universe is. You could probably help. Know which, not just for sale, but the number of duplexes that will qualify. Thinking up on North Union, towards the dead end up there, there are a couple of sort of multi-family, more modern looking. I'm not sure what the zoning is there, so I don't want to rattle on too much. I'm afraid they just won't get fixed up, and we know there's not enough land bank money to tear them down, and there's some we're saving for sure.
So while the mayor's kind of rooting around for some defining the parameters of the universe, as he says, maybe you could reach out to Mr. Palmer for some wording in a skeleton form to convey the idea, so that whenever we meet again, we've got some specifics to talk about.
Well, and that's what I was getting ready to add to let everybody know. I think Top Felder's right, and the mayor's correct too, to take and look at it from various perspectives, as well as the one perspective which we don't have tonight is a legal perspective. We'll visit this thing again. Our next committee meeting will be the first of next month. Okay, we'll hopefully have some better perspective on everything, because we want to, the bottom line is, in my opinion, is that we want to protect the property owners of single family, but we also want to give these folks that are out there renovating these homes that are basically zombies, the opportunity and to be able to do that as well. So, I was gonna say trick, but, the idea is to be able to find that median where we can do all of that if it's possible. And I think there's possibly a way to do that. So, and having said that, we're already into almost an hour, so I'm gonna go ahead and adjourn the meeting for tonight, folks. Did anybody have any other questions?
Wait a minute, can't adjourn, my computer died, it won't let me adjourn.
Okay, well, we'll do that for you anyway. I just have some other things. But I just wanted to say for one thing that it was very great that you folks all came. Obviously, we're gonna bring this up again. If you have any other questions or anything, please, I'm sure anybody that's around this table will be happy to talk to you or visit to discuss it. As soon as I'm live again here.
You're live, I can't adjourn the meeting.
Oh,
Real
okay.
So you're putting, just throw out some numbers, say 60 into you pay 12 or 15, you put 60 into it, something like that?
Yeah, the last house, we purchased it for 35 and we
We're
had
talking
it.
about numbers more than that.
Yeah, we have more.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
so I guess what is, you can't, what we saw in trying to get new housing to spark and get going, just got smaller and cheaper over the last 8 or 9 months. You know, some of the properties we looked at on the Port-owned property, some of the building footprints, boy, they got smaller and the price just got much higher than what you're looking at. So I'm back to, how do you get Galleonites, working, retired, whatever income they have, into new upgraded housing as quick, the quickest way to do it. And
We just need
It'd be interesting to
Yeah.
get the realtor's point of view on this, only because the reason I only bring that up is like the house that next to me that I restored.
Yeah.
A gentleman from Columbus bought. I know where Don Barr lived, the houses on
Right.
both sides of him were bought by people from Columbus. And I'm being told that people from Columbus and those areas are coming to Galleon, for 2 reasons. One, safety. Like the gentleman that bought the house next to me, he said, I could not afford a house in a safe neighborhood in Columbus, but I could afford a house in Galleon, and I'll drive that hour every day because I could get a quality home in a safe community that I didn't have to worry about being robbed or mugged or shot at on a regular basis. And I think, don't overlook that we have a real selling point with Galleon. I mean, we really do. In fact, I've been beating on the Chamber of Commerce to do that we're big town close and small town safe as the slogan of Galleon.
2 reasons to move to Galleon: drugs and crime. The lack of them.
Well, that's right, the lack of, it's a heck of a selling point. I mean, it really is. Because it's becoming a big problem in these big cities. It's a problem.
And to your point, matter of fact, I have a neighbor across the street from me, and that's exactly what he has.
Yeah.
He has a home across the street. He drives down to Dublin.
Yeah.
Okay, and then drives back. He said it's cheaper for him
Yep.
to make the drive. Of course, that was prior to the gas going where it's
Yeah.
going now, but it's cheaper to him, and it's better peace of mind for him.
And they're willing to pay $180,000, $200,000 for a house here in Galleon.
Right.
And we just, Zeisler's house just sold for $400,000.
Right.
Across from the hospital.
Well, I tell you what, like I say, I think this has been a great discussion, a starting point.
Oh, yeah, the one across from Doc. They're just sold for $195,000.
Yeah.
Duplex.
It was a duplex. It always had been a duplex. It wasn't another one of those.
It wasn't, so.
Oh, now we're looking at.
Well, as long as I was ever in the neighborhood, I always thought it was.
A duplex?
Yeah,
Yes.
duplex. It may have not been originally built, but it was always maintained.
Correct.
And it was well maintained.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was well maintained property, and it sold for $195,000.
Yeah.
So, I mean, properties are selling for, a good amount of money.
Well, again, I think that this was a good discussion starting point. I think we've got a lot of
Yeah.
material to go over again before our next meeting, which, by the way, will be April 5th at 7 o'clock here in this meeting room. Obviously, you folks are all welcome to come. Hopefully, some other folks will come. We can get some input from them as well, and hopefully have some more information by that time. And unless somebody's got something else, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So entertaining.
Okay, and I'll second that. We are adjourned, Julie, at
At 8:05.
8:05. Thank you very much.
So these guys and gals